There are moments in the Bible that don't get preached about, moments too raw, too painful, too uncomfortable for Sunday morning sermons. This is one of them. A mother standing on a mountain, alone, surrounded by death, for months, refusing to leave. Her name was Rizpah, and if you've never heard her story, you're about to discover one of the most powerful displays of maternal love ever recorded in Scripture. Rizpah wasn't a queen, she wasn't a prophet, she wasn't famous. She was a concubine of King Saul, a woman whose name most people skip over when reading 2 Samuel. A woman with no power, no voice, no rights in a world ruled by men and kings. But what she did on that mountain, the choice she made when everything was taken from her, would move a king to action and change how an entire nation honored their dead. And there's something hidden in Rizpah's story that will completely change how you see the dignity of grief. Something about what happened during those 5 months of watching and waiting. Something about a love that refused to surrender even to death itself. So stay with me, because the story of the mother who wouldn't let death steal her son's honor begins now. To understand Rizpah, we need to go back to one terrible day in Israel. King David was on the throne. Saul had been dead for years. The kingdom had finally stabilized. David ruled from Jerusalem. Peace seemed possible, but something terrible was happening to the land. 2 Samuel chapter 21, verse 1. During the reign of David, there was a famine for 3 successive years. So David sought the face of the Lord. 3 years, crops failing, children starving, animals dying. The land itself seemed cursed. And when David finally asked God why, the answer was chilling. The Lord said, "It is on account of Saul and his blood-stained house. It is because he put the Gibeonites to death." Years before, when Saul was king, he had broken a sacred treaty. He had murdered the Gibeonites, people Israel had sworn to protect. And now, years after Saul's death, God was holding the nation accountable. Blood guilt doesn't just disappear because the guilty person dies. Sin has consequences that echo through generations. David called the Gibeonites to him and asked what could be done to make atonement. Their answer was brutal. 2 Samuel chapter 21 verse 6. "Let 7 of Saul's male descendants be given to us, to be killed, and their bodies exposed before the Lord." 7 men from Saul's family, public execution. David agreed, verse 8. But the king took Armoni and Mephibosheth, the 2 sons of Aiah's daughter Rizpah, whom she had borne to Saul, together with the 5 sons of Saul's daughter Merab. 7 men total. 2 of them were Rizpah's sons, and she was about to watch them die for a sin their father committed before they were even born. Imagine that moment. Rizpah standing in the palace courtyard when the soldiers came, her sons being taken from her. She couldn't stop it. She was a concubine, property, not a person with rights. She had no legal standing, no voice in the decision, no power to protect her children. She could only watch as they were led away, could only follow at a distance as they were taken up the mountain, could only stand among the crowd as the execution took place. 2 Samuel chapter 21 verse 9, he handed them over to the Gibeonites, who killed them and exposed their bodies on a hill before the Lord. All 7 of them fell together. They were put to death during the first days of the harvest, just as the barley harvest was beginning. 7 bodies, hanging, exposed, left for the birds and the wild animals. No burial, no dignity, just corpses displayed as a public statement. And among those 7 were Rizpah's 2 sons, dead. And according to the law, she couldn't even touch them. She couldn't take them down. She couldn't bury them. She could only watch as the sun beat down on their lifeless bodies, as the birds began to circle, as the smell of death filled the air. What would you do in that moment, when your children pay for sins they never committed? When even death doesn't grant them rest? Most people would collapse. Most people would walk away. Most people would surrender to despair. But Rizpah did something no one expected. Verse 10. Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it out for herself on a rock. From the beginning of the harvest till the rain poured down from the heavens on the bodies, she did not let the birds touch them by day or the wild animals by night. Read that again slowly. She took sackcloth and spread it on a rock, and she stayed there from the beginning of harvest until the rains came. In Israel, the barley harvest began in late spring. The rains came in autumn. That's approximately 5 months. 150 days, 5 months of Rizpah sitting on that mountain, alone, watching over dead bodies, driving away vultures, screaming at wild animals, refusing to let death desecrate what she could no longer hold. Before we continue, if this story is gripping your heart, if you're beginning to understand the fierce, relentless nature of sacrificial love, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next will show you how one woman's grief moved a king to change everything. And you'll want more stories like this, stories of forgotten women, radical love, and honor restored from ashes. Can you imagine the scene in vivid cinematic detail? Picture it with me now. The blazing Middle Eastern sun beating down on her during the day, temperatures reaching over 100 degrees. The fabric of her sackcloth rough and heavy against her skin. The sweat, the thirst, the exhaustion, the smell, unbearable at first, the smell of death and decay, then something she learned to endure, something that became part of her existence. The sound of birds cawing overhead, circling, waiting, testing her resolve, diving down when they thought she wasn't watching. And Rizpah waving her arms, shouting, throwing stones, refusing to let them land, refusing to let them touch what was left of her sons. And then the nights, so dark, so cold, so terrifying, the temperature dropping in the desert, Rizpah shivering on her rock. Wolves howling in the distance, jackals approaching, their eyes glowing in the darkness. The sounds of them circling, growling, waiting for her to sleep. And Rizpah standing, her voice hoarse from shouting all day, screaming into the darkness, waving her arms, staying awake because if she slept they would come. So she stayed awake, night after night, her body growing weaker, her skin burning, her lips cracking, her hands bleeding. But she would not leave. Other people passed by on the road below. Travelers, merchants, shepherds, they saw her there day after day, week after week. They whispered about her. Have you seen the woman on the mountain? Why doesn't she leave? Doesn't she know they're dead? But Rizpah didn't care what they thought. She had one job left as a mother. She could guard their bodies. She could protect their dignity. She could keep the vultures away. This is love that transcends death itself. This is a mother who refused to let the world forget that these were human beings, not just criminals, not just casualties. Her sons, men with names, Armoni, Mephibosheth, men who had lived, who had laughed, who had dreams, who had been loved, and they deserved honor. Have you ever loved someone so much that even after they're gone, you keep protecting them? That's exactly what Rizpah did. For 5 months. We don't know what Rizpah said during those 5 months. Scripture doesn't record her words, but can you imagine what she must have whispered in the darkness? When the sun set on the first night, maybe she said their names. Armoni, Mephibosheth. I'm here. I won't leave you, I promise. When the first week passed and no one came, maybe she prayed, God, are you watching? Do you see me? Do you see them? When the first month ended and her body began to fail, maybe she wept. How long, Lord? How long must I guard what I can no longer hold? How long must I sit here watching death? When the second month came and still no answer, maybe she made a vow. I will not leave, not until you restore their honor, not until someone sees that these lives mattered. I will sit here as long as it takes. When the third month arrived and the heat became unbearable, maybe she talked to them. I'm still here, my sons. I haven't left. The birds came today, but I drove them away. The jackals came last night, but they didn't touch you. I'm protecting you. Even now, you are not forgotten. When the fourth month came and she was truly alone, maybe doubt crept in. Am I mad? Is this pointless? Will anyone ever care? But then resolve would return. It doesn't matter, these are my sons, and I will honor them. And when the 5th month arrived, when the first clouds gathered, when she felt the first drops of rain, maybe she whispered, "He heard me. God heard me. Someone is coming." Scripture is silent on her words, but her actions spoke louder than any prayer. Her presence on that rock was a sermon. Her faithfulness was a witness. Have you ever felt like God wasn't listening, like your vigil was going unnoticed, like your faithfulness was invisible? That's exactly where Rizpah was, month after month, alone, unseen. But she was wrong about one thing. Someone was watching, and word was about to reach the palace. The story spread. Have you heard about the woman on the mountain? She's been there for months, until eventually it reached King David. 2 Samuel chapter 21 verse 11. When David was told what Aiah's daughter Rizpah, Saul's concubine, had done, he went and took the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from the citizens of Jabesh Gilead. When David was told. For months a woman had been sitting on a mountain, and the king didn't know. He had moved on. Justice had been served. The matter was closed. Until someone told him about Rizpah. Something shifted in David when he heard. Her vigil, her refusal to let death have the final word, her months of faithfulness convicted him. David knew grief. David had lost sons, and suddenly he realized what he had done. He had left bodies unburied. He had moved on too quickly. Rizpah's 5 months on that rock were a rebuke. So David acted. He couldn't undo the executions, but he could restore honor. Verse 12 and 13. David went and took the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from the citizens of Jabesh Gilead. David brought the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from there, and the bones of those who had been killed and exposed were gathered up. All of them, Rizpah's sons, all 7 who had been executed, their bodies were taken down, treated with dignity. Verse 14. They buried the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan in the tomb of Saul's father Kish at Zelah in Benjamin, and did everything the king commanded. After that, God answered prayer in behalf of the land. After that, after the dead were honored, after dignity was restored, after Rizpah's vigil ended in vindication, God answered prayer. The famine ended, the land healed, not when justice was served, but when honor was restored. Rizpah wasn't just a mother mourning her sons. She was a living picture of something profound about God's character. When everyone else walked away, when the nation moved on, when even the king forgot, one woman stayed. And her refusal to abandon the dead is exactly what God does for us. Just as Rizpah guarded bodies that the world said didn't matter anymore, God guards our stories when the world says we're finished. Just as Rizpah fought vultures for 5 months, Jesus descended into death itself to fight for us. Just as Rizpah's vigil moved a king to restore honor, our prayers move the King of Heaven to act. This is the gospel hidden in Rizpah's story. God doesn't abandon the dead. He doesn't forget the forgotten. He doesn't move on from what the world calls hopeless. And if a concubine's love could move an earthly king, how much more does your faithfulness move the heart of God? Rizpah sat on that rock for 5 months. Jesus lay in a tomb for 3 days, but death couldn't hold either story. God could have made David act immediately. He could have spared Rizpah the suffering, but he didn't. Because sometimes the waiting is part of the witness. Sometimes enduring through the unbearable is what moves heaven to act. God doesn't despise our grief. He honors it. He sees the mother on the mountain, and he responds, not always immediately, but always faithfully. Rizpah guarded bodies that would decay. Jesus promised bodies that would rise. Rizpah fought vultures for months. Jesus defeated death forever. And that means if you're sitting on your own mountain today, if you're guarding something precious that the world says is already dead, your vigil is not in vain. God sees you, honor is coming. So what do we learn from Rizpah? First, don't let anyone rush your grief. Rizpah sat for 5 months. The world would have told her, it's been long enough, move on. But grief is not a deadline. It's love that refuses to forget. If you're grieving today, if someone has told you it's time to get over it, know this: your tears are not weakness, they're worship, and God honors every single one. Second, guarding dignity is sacred work. Rizpah couldn't save her sons' lives, but she could protect their honor. She could fight for their dignity even in death. You may not be able to change outcomes, you may not be able to prevent loss, but you can choose how you honor what was, how you remember, how you refuse to let the world erase what mattered. That's not small work, that's kingdom work. Finally, your vigil is a witness. Rizpah's 5 months didn't just honor her sons, it convicted a king, it changed a nation, it ended a famine. When you endure faithfully through unbearable pain, you're showing the world what love looks like when everything else is stripped away. And that witness has power to move heaven itself. So the question isn't, how long will this pain last? The question is, will you guard what you love with the same fierce devotion Rizpah showed? If Rizpah's story has broken something open in your heart today, I want you to do 3 things. First, leave a comment below and write, "Love doesn't end at death." Because maybe today is the day you give yourself permission to grieve fully, to love fiercely, even in loss. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every week we bring you forgotten biblical women with powerful testimonies, real stories of suffering that led to honor, messages that don't rush your pain but walk with you through it, stories that show you God sees every tear and wastes none of them. Third, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's grieving and feels guilty for not moving on. Someone who's been told their pain is too much, too long, too heavy. Someone who needs to know that sitting on the rock, guarding what you love, is not weakness. It's the most powerful thing you can do. Because this isn't just a story from thousands of years ago. This is your story. This is every person who has ever loved deeply and lost greatly. Rizpah started as a concubine with no power and no voice. She became a mother who lost everything in a single day. And she ended as the woman whose love moved a king and healed a nation. The difference? She refused to let death define the story. That's the difference between despair and devotion. Despair says, "They're gone, so nothing matters anymore." Devotion says, "They're gone, but I will honor them as long as I breathe." Despair abandons the mountain. Devotion stays through 5 months of heat and cold, day and night, alone and afraid. Thousands of years have passed since Rizpah spread sackcloth on that rock, but the message remains unchanged. Your love is not wasted. Your vigil is not unseen. Your faithfulness in the unbearable will be rewarded with honor. Today, God is asking you, will you trust me to restore what death has taken? And the answer is, you can. No matter how long you've been on the mountain, no matter how many nights you've sat in darkness, no matter how many people think you should have moved on, you can stay, you can grieve, you can guard what you love. Because God sees you, honor is coming. Don't let your story end in despair. Don't surrender to voices that say it's time to forget. Don't abandon the rock where you've kept watch. Because when the King hears about your faithfulness, and he will act, he will restore. He will honor what you thought was lost forever. May the story of Rizpah remind you today that the greatest act of love is not preventing death. It's refusing to let death steal dignity. God bless you deeply. Until the next story.